So welcome once again to another In Conversation here at Super League Raw, and we are delighted to have former Super League referee Ian Smith with us for this episode. Ian, welcome to Super League Raw.
Thank you, David.
Happy days. Great to have you. Right, we'll get into Ian's career in a bit, but before we do, we always start off nice and slow, settling in. So here we go. Ian, what's your favourite film of all time?
Life of Brian. Very, very easy. Love it. You know, it's still pertinent even in 2024. Yeah, very, very funny.
Are you a naughty boy, Ian?
No. Definitely not. I was probably one of the good ones, but no, it's just, yeah. He's not coming out. He's been a very naughty boy.
Favourite song? What's your favourite song?
Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen.
Banging. About 3 times that's been Christmas number one, isn't it? So one of the.
Do you know something? I'll tell you how old I am. I saw Queen at the Manchester Apollo in 1976. That was my first ever concert. And my last ever concert was Queen at Nebworth, I think in 87 or 88. So I was lucky enough to see Queen 3 times live. And it only goes downhill from that, mate. Only goes downhill.
One of the best showmen ever. Mr. Freddie Mercury, outstanding. There's a lot of people who've already turned off in disgust. I mean, you know, to go and see Queen, you're lucky, man, to see him 3 times. Incredible. Right. What are you watching on the telly at the minute? What's your box set?
I'm into a bit of dramas. So I like crime dramas. So, but at the moment, I'm heavily into the NFL. So I tape every NFL game and I watch them randomly. It might take me 2 days to go through one game. Obviously, I'd zoom through the bits, but I like the way that it's aggressive chess. You know, everybody's trying to outmaneuver the opposition, and I just love the way that it's aggressive, but it's very smart, and it's about the offense and defense trying to outmaneuver each other. Like I said, like aggressive chess. So I'm very much into me NFL these days.
And who's your team? Have you got a team?
No, not particularly, but I was lucky enough to referee a pre-season tournament way back in the early 2000s when Leeds, Huddersfield, and Halifax went over to Jacksonville. So I was over in Jacksonville with Jeff Burry and Cal Kirkpatrick. You'll probably remember Cal Kirkpatrick, another ex-Super League referee, refereed the 2006 grand final, I believe. So I refereed it was called the Alltel Stadium at Jacksonville. So managed to referee a game on the Jacksonville Jaguars Stadium. So yeah, they're probably my team if I was to pick. But I'm a bit for the underdog. So I like the way that the draft system works, so that the worst teams get the best players, and you really want those teams at the bottom to do well the following year.
Yeah, and I think we've seen a lot of parallels in the NRL in terms of the production. I mean, what they do very well, isn't it, is the television side of it on the NFL. And I think over the last couple of years, you can really see I think there's a bit of because they like their NFL over in Australia, you can see what the NRL are doing in terms of production value, isn't it? Very, very similar.
Yeah, because it's also entertainment business. You know, it's not. I know we have a great product. I know that 80 minutes for me personally is the best 80 minutes of any sport that you're going to get. But people want more than just 80 minutes. You know, they want the razzmatazz. They want the entertainment. They want the oohs and the ahs and there's so much more. And like you say, the NFL do it better than any sport regarding, you know, the extra, you know, the fireworks and everything that goes with an NFL game. So, but obviously that costs. You know, the one thing the NFL have got is incredible amount of money and power with the networks.
Absolutely. Of course, if you want to go and see a Queen tribute, go to the LSB. Derek will put one on for you. Right. 3 words that best describe Ian.
Oh, 3 words at best. Mr. Average Guy.
We're going to touch on that in the book. We are going to touch on that. We'll get to his book in a moment, ladies and gentlemen. But that's interesting, really interesting. Right, I saw in the book one of your proudest moments was walking your daughter down the aisle. What was your go-to dance move that day on the dance floor, Ian? What's your favourite dance move?
Yeah, very much an 80s. I was born in 1965. So when I used to go to nightclubs in the 80s, so I'm very much, well, Saturday Night Fever and John Travolta was more late 70s, but I think I probably got the moves of a John Travolta, very much, that type of move. Get the hips going. That's the way I can boogie it. But it is proper dad dancing now, and I'm a granddad to two boys, so it's more granddad dancing. So I'm probably more an embarrassment now.
Well, we're looking to go on tour with Super League Raw Live. We might get Ian down for one of them to get him in a white suit and he can give us a demonstration of that one. That'll sell some tickets. Right. What was your favourite ground to referee in? What was your favourite?
Oh, my favourite ground. In terms of atmosphere or in terms of the whole package,
Let's do
you know,
both. So atmosphere and package.
atmosphere, probably Castleford. Castleford was incredible. And Salford, when you were coming out from that cage at the Old Willows, it could be, even though there weren't the biggest crowds, my word, they could be intimidating. I think the KC Stadium, for its splendour, was fantastic. I know there's a lot of new stadiums around these days. I always enjoy going to Leeds Rhinos. I always thought the South Stand created a fantastic atmosphere. And even though there's a mix of the old tradition and the new at Leeds, I just like the whole ambience of that. And I'm a big cricket fan as well. So walking around the side of the Headingley Cricket Square and remembering Ian Botham hitting all those sixes and this and the other. So there's a little bit of nostalgia as well with the Headingley Stadium itself.
Yeah, and again, like I say, we'll come to Ian's book in a moment. But what I loved about that book, and again, some of the younger people who are watching this won't know words like watersheddings and willows and all the rest of it. And as I'm reading it, it just brought a smile to my face because I think you say it in the book. There's nowhere colder than the watersheddings. So, but your dad, the memories of your dad taking you to the watersheddings, and when you said that, he says in his book, ladies and gentlemen, that his dad put him over because you could do that back then over the turnstiles. Kids got in free. I remember my granddad doing that to me at Wilderspool. So again, brought wonderful memories back when I was reading that. Right, let's carry on. Your Super League or Rugby League hero, because I know you're a Rugby League fan as well as a referee. Who was your hero on the Rugby League field?
Uh, well, I never got the opportunity to referee him because he was before my time, but probably Ellery Hanley. I just think that he had everything. He had speed, he had guile, he had strength, he had power, he had an incredible rugby league brain. And I just thought he just was literally the all-round package. And we talk about eras, you talk about players. I think Ellery Hanley was one who would fit in any era, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, even the 20s now where we are. I just think he got it all. And it was just fantastic watching him. As an Oldham Rugby fan, I used to hate it when he got the ball when he was at Bradford in the earlier days, and then Leeds, because you just knew he was just going to rip our team to bits. So I didn't particularly like watching him against my team, but it was just fantastic. And even now, because of social media and all the platforms, you get to see some of the old clips, and even now, you're just watching in a maze of just this legend um, just breaking through. And he didn't seem particularly fast, but nobody could seem to catch him. A bit like you Wally Lewis, if you're talking about NRL or Australian legends. Uh, Wally Lewis, I watched him in his first game when he played at Wakefield against Oldham. And he just seemed to be slow, but yeah, he just goes through gaps and he just has so much time. And the beauty about being a referee is that you're just so close to him. You just see how much time these great players seem to have.
Great place, create space on him. He had a lovely body swerve on him, didn't he, Ellery? I remember some of his tries over the years. He had a lovely way of manoeuvring his body. So he was very difficult to tackle. One of my favourite memories was when Warrington used to come up against Wigan. I mean, to have Mike Gregory and Ellery Hanley on the same pitch was a treat for the eyes back in the day. Two legends of the game. So you never got the chance to officiate Ellery. Who was the best player you ever had the privilege of observing from the middle? So you're refereeing. Who was a player that you admired whilst you were refereeing?
Paul Sculthorpe is probably two-time Man of Steel, former Oldham Waterhead, just St Helens legend and rugby league legend. You know, the great thing about Paul was, you know, he again, bit like Ellery, he had that size, he had that strength, he had that power, he had that body shape. He could be a 13, he could be a 6, he had a good kicking game, he had a great brain, but also incredibly aggressive. You know, and I mean, when he hit, you know, the beauty about being a referee, sometimes you're just so close to those hits, and you hear the impact. You can almost feel it, and and it's just when they knock them back. There's nothing better than the referee shouting dominant. You know, for me now, there's too many hit and drops, there's too many surrenders, and that's why they shouldn't get rewarded for a surrender. But luckily, in the full noughties, which I refereed, that full year from 99 to 2010, you weren't allowed to hit and drop. You weren't allowed to surrender. It was about winning that duel. And watching, you know, if I'm only going to name one at this moment in time, watching Paul just knock him back and then stand up over him, this 6 foot odd, you know, giant of a rugby league player. It was just, it almost gives you goosebumps as a rugby league fan to be that close to the action, you know. But you also had to remember that, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
sometimes you just, not just with Paul, but with loads of players, you just wanted to put your whistle down and start clapping because you were in awe of them like the fans were. But
yeah.
obviously, I had a job to do as well.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And that must be difficult because I'll be honest with you, if I see a great try from the opposition, I'll applaud it. You know, I am a bit of a rugby league purist in that respect. I really do respect top skill, whether it's for my team or not. I think sometimes you just got to put your hands up and go, great try, mate. Who was the biggest wind-up merchant? Who was the one? Because we always figure that like Sam Tompkins of this world who wants to referee, give him a whistle type thing. Who was the player that you officiated who you knew the moment you went over that whitewash? I'm gonna have an earache by the end of this game.
Oh, probably Danny Brough. And this is not against Danny because fantastic player, refereed him many, many, many times. He was a winner, and decisions that went against him, he didn't like. In particular, he must have thought it was something personal, which it never was. I think that the difficulty at times was that he would also be captain. So sometimes, as a referee, when you wanted to get messages via the captain to other players, with somebody who was so passionate about the game and so passionate about decisions going against his team, sometimes it wasn't easy to get the messages across. But please do not think that that is a crack against Danny, because I also was one that would have applauded a lot of what he did, because he was brilliant. Again, somebody else who would take the line on, somebody else who will see these things appearing before anybody else did. But he certainly wore his heart on his sleeve.
Yeah,
And at times, there's a fine line between having a conversation and dissent. And sometimes, because of how worked up and passionate he was about his team, it could sometimes just fall on the wrong side. But
yeah.
again, a great player, but you also knew that you was going to be in for a little bit of lip service from him, should I say?
Yeah, no, and that's come up a couple of times with Danny. If I'm being honest, let's go cheeky though. Who's the funniest? So who's a player that can you remember a player that had you chuckling, maybe wisecracks or could say something during a game that you just thought you cheeky bugger type thing?
Yeah, probably Barry Mack. You know, I used to live next door to Barry for a short spell back in the day, and Barry was brilliant at the one-liners. Sometimes, more often than not, at the opposition when you were waiting to scrum down if there was an injury. But he'd have the odd one-liner to me as well. But again, just a fantastic player, and watching him at the size of him, the speed of his sidestep, and the power that he used to hit, you used to think, oh, but no, Barry could have the good one-liners at times.
Yeah, that was a different era. Everybody remembers Barry and Fielding and all of that. What great John Neils, Moz and all the rest of them back in the day. Brutal down the middle. Right. Let's describe some of these players then in one word, whether as a fan or as a referee. Let's pick a few out. Andy Farrell. Players that you'd have crossed paths with. Andy Farrell.
Oh, many, many, many times. Great leader, great leader. He did it, and he spoke it. So absolutely outstanding leader on the pitch.
You're the man that you just mentioned, Paul Sculthorpe.
Oh, legend, just all
Yeah.
round legend of our game.
Lee
Love refereeing him and love uh, being on the same pitch as him.
Lee Breers.
Cheeky. Uh, Yeah, talking about one-liners, Lee was very much one with the little one-liners, but he'd always give you a little sly wink at the end because he knew it was nothing personal. But yeah, cheeky in a good way.
Rangy Chase.
Oh, crafty.
Fair enough.
You never knew what he was going to do, Rangi, and sometimes I don't think he did. Uh, but again, just the mercurial, his hands, when he passed them around his back and little side steps. And yeah, just a very mercurial rugby league player.
One for the French contingent, Thomas Bosch.
Thomas Boss was what I just thought he was uh, very, very. What's the word? What's the word that could describe? Just a really good all-round pro. He probably accept that he wasn't the fastest, wasn't the quickest, wasn't the most skillful. Uh, but you could just see the passion in his eyes for the Dragons and for the French team to want to do and be the best that he possibly could be. And I would imagine for the Catalan Dragons throughout all the years, he'd be probably one of the first names on the team sheet just
Yeah.
because you wanted to follow him.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to get to your book. So the last one, gotta give you this name, Rob Burrow, son Robbo.
Hero,
Yeah,
hero. So I had to do. I'd done quite a lot of research for the book, and I refereed Leeds 84 times in my career, and I would have thought Rob will have played in pretty much all of them.
yeah,
Because he never seemed to be injured. He always seemed to be the one that. But he just gives me goosebumps, and it makes me quite emotional just to see him as a great player and as a great man, and his ultimate painful illness. But again, when you're on a pitch and you just see somebody catch the ball and you're just waiting for that spark, you're waiting for that genius just to do something. And even though the players knew he was going to duck and go through or sidestep or do something, even though they knew what he was going to do, they just couldn't get him. So,
yeah.
of all the things that I've done in my career, to say that it's an honour and a privilege to referee one player, it'd be Rob Burrow.
Outstanding. We were the Super League Raw gang were at the audience with Kev Sinfield in Warrington on Wednesday night. I don't know if you had the chance to go to that. I know they're touring at the moment. It's an outstanding evening with Barry and with Kev, and that goes into 2025, ladies and gentlemen. So go and have a look at that and try and get to that. Really, you talk about heroes. There's none bigger than Kev. Absolutely
No.
incredible. Right, before we get to your book, 3 dinner party guests. I think I'm going to guess who one of these actually might be based on your gigging days. 3 dinner party guests, alive or dead. Who does Ian invite for a cracking chat?
Oh my word! What? God, that's a tough question. Don't know. I mean, dinner guess. Peter Kay
Yeah,
might be one of them. I like a good laugh. Uh, Ricky Gervais might be another who we're going to go down the laugh. And an historical figure. Who do I think would be a good historical figure to come back? Actually, I think I'd have liked to have met the late Queen. I'm a big royalist, and just to see how Her Majesty was over the years, been incredible. So the Queen, Ricky Gervais, and Peter Kay.
wow. Well, I'll tell you, I'll let you have a 4th. Get Freddie in the room, so there's 2 queens there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've
That'll
already mentioned
get him
Freddie
there.
enough. So, but
Yeah,
no, yeah. To be fair,
bring the
I watched
entertainment.
Bohemian Rhapsody twice when I were on holiday on the plane, and both times I'm almost like crying at the end because that was my childhood, that was
Yeah,
my youth. watching the great Freddie Mercury. So yeah, we'll add a fourth. To be honest, if I'm going to do that, then can I not add a fifth with Brian May? Because I just love listening to him play the guitar.
Oh, bring the whole band. But no, I mean, yeah, I think Bohemian Rhapsody was a phenomenal film, and I think Rocket Man. I think when the Elton John one came out, I have to watch that again. I was disappointed with that, but I think it was probably because, again, comparison is the killer. I think because Bohemian Rhapsody was so good, it just didn't match up to how good Bohemian Rhapsody was. Anyway, right, that brings us to Ian. So Ian has brought out his own book, which is a fascinating read. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if you can see it. There you go, just about coming in and out of the shot. Ian, my final whistle, Ian Smith. Pretty much sure that if you get to go on Amazon or other reputable places, you'll be able to pick up a copy of Ian's book. A great read. Obviously, we had Aaron Moore doing In Conversation with us, and I know a lot of people enjoyed Aaron's because to understand the game from a referee's perspective, we don't hear that a lot, and people really enjoyed it. Of course, Aaron is still competing, or say refereeing so maybe with Aaron, he's got to be a bit careful in terms of what he says around certain things of the game. But of course, Ian's retired, and actually, having read his book, I think he's probably a bit more open to a little bit of a chat. So this could be very, very interesting. Right. So before we one of the things that I picked out very early on, of course, you did play rugby league up there in Oldham as a youngster. That was your introduction into the game. I had a little dabble at football, but rugby league ended up being your passion. Just a quick shout out to your old, to your old team, Salem Hornets and Oldham St Anne's. Talk us through that period of your life. Going and playing rugby league with your mates on a field on a Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah, I loved it. I wasn't the most gifted rugby league player, but I like, to be honest, I like the camaraderie. I like being part of that team. And the thing is about rugby league is, especially back in the 90s as an amateur rugby league player, uh, you needed all the different facets. You needed your bigger lads. You needed your quick lads. You needed your aggressive ones, because amateur rugby league was brutal. There was many fights. There was many brawls. There was so much. People raising their elbows, and in those days, but I wasn't a fighter, so we needed one or two of the fighters around, and luckily at Salem we'd quite a few. And they were just a really good bunch of lads. A bit like most amateur clubs, though, it tended to be frustrating because you'd have a great win one week, and then you turn up at the pub or the club the week after, and there'd be three or four players that had got drunk on a Friday night and weren't turning up, or they were working because they had to do, and all of a sudden you go with the depleted team. You go over to, when we were in the Pennine League, you go to some of these places over in Halifax and Bradford and Huddersfield, and you knew you're going with 11 or 12 men, and you were going to get absolutely pasted both on the scoreboard and physically as well. But it was just great times. And then I had the opportunity to play one season at Oldham St Anne's on the Steve Deacon, who did a lot in the south of France. I was with a guy last week called Chris Churm, who was a good player. Leo Casey, who signed at Featherstone, and just Richard Russell, Ollie Russell's dad. Richard Russell was a great player who went on to be at Castleford and Wigan. So, there were some really good players in those amateur ranks. Unfortunately, I wasn't one of them. That's why I decided to take up the whistle.
Absolutely. And, in terms of, we'll get to refereeing as a career in a minute, but in terms of any younger people who are watching at the moment in time, I enjoy watching rugby league, but I've not actually joined a local team. Talk to those youngsters directly. Why should they consider going down to their local rugby league team? What would they gain from that?
You'll gain friends for life. You will learn discipline. You will learn what it means to look out for your mate or your teammate. It's about structure. It's about taking orders. It's about learning about yourself, learning about others, but also just that feeling of the physicality. And I know the game's a lot cleaner nowadays, so you don't have those brawls like you used to have. So there's there's the discipline element to it, but you can still, there's no better feeling as a player than either making a break and scoring or setting somebody else up or dropping your shoulder and just drilling somebody into the ground because you've just nailed that tackle and you stand up and the hairs on the back of my neck are standing up and just that adrenaline rush and that, wow, this is incredible. And the thing about rugby league is you get all that in 80 minutes and it's just an incredible feeling at whatever level you play. You don't need to run out at Wembley to have that feeling of tackling somebody and knocking them on the backside.
No, it's fantastic. Yeah, again, everybody who comes on speaks incredibly highly of the amateur game. If you've never done it, kids, get yourselves down to an amateur. You'll find one. You'll find one. Just get onto Google, find who they are, go down, and as Ian says, you'll make friends for life, and also it'll stand you in good stead in terms of what life's going to throw at you in the future. Ian, obviously, when Aaron was on, Aaron got played for North Wales, was on Salford's books, etc. And of course, he went into refereeing. Walk us through that, just very briefly. How did you get into refereeing? How did that all come about?
I broke my rib, quite a real nasty rib injury. And I was thinking about refereeing. I was 30 years of age at the time, which now is very old for a referee. But at the time, it was about right. Play for 10 years, then see how things pan out. And I was starting to pick up more injuries, and I was missing time off work. And I'd always, a guy called Mark Kennedy who played at Salem but was a grade 2 referee. I was good friends with Mark, and he said, "Why don't you just?" I got this rib injury, and I said, "I'm not going to play anymore." And he said, "Why don't you come try out at the Oldham Referee Society?" And I did Haywood under 14s, my first game, and all of a sudden, just felt like it was just like a light bulb moment. Just wow. I'd enjoyed scoring the tries, I'd enjoyed the tackles, but this was just an all new level of enjoyment, an all new level of excitement. And I knew that if I put all the effort in, I would get the rewards. Where, like I mentioned before, you'd have a good win and you'd be buoyed for the next week. And then 3 were working, 2 were injured, and 2 were drunk from the night before, and you'd have a totally different team. So no matter how hard I trained during the week as a player, it wouldn't always be the same rewards at the weekend. But as a referee, I felt the harder I trained, the more I put into this, the more rewards I would get from it.
And your rights in your early refereeing career was quite incredible. A short period of time and a lot of accolades. Just touch on that in terms of your rapid progression to all of a sudden being in around Championship, Super League opportunities.
Yeah, I just think, excuse me, I just think at the time there was an opportunity. At the time, Greg McCallum came across from Australia. He wanted to mix it up a little bit, and it sometimes there are partings where it just takes for somebody that maybe just shows that something different. And like I said, I was nothing special. Whether it was my attitude, whether he just watched me at the right time in the right game at the right place, but all of a sudden, every game I ref seemed to have the right person watching me to get to the next level and the next level. And literally, by the time I turned round, I was in the boardroom at Red Hall with all these great Super League referees thinking, wow, how on earth, how did this happen? So yeah, I think opportunities just aligned, all the stars aligned at the right time in the late 90s.
It was interesting when Aaron came on because and we'll touch on this with yourself as well in terms of what goes on behind the scenes as a referee. And of course, you were a part-time. It wasn't professional refereeing when you started. Of course, you became a full-time referee. I think it was 2006, if memory calls me right, in terms of your book. But in terms of your rise, I never realised there was any such thing as a referee of the year in these levels, and you went back to back, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah, it was the Northern Ford Premiership. Yeah, I won 2 the late 90s Northern Ford Premiership Referee of the Year. There are still Referee of the Year awards. We want to promote. They're into Super League Referee of the Year award because once it became full time, they felt that wasn't appropriate anymore. But at every level, Northwest Counties National Conference Referee of the Year, Northern Ford Premiership, twice on the bounce, and again, the they're accolades that you like and you want, but they don't define you. But they're nice little stepping stones. In my front lounge, I've still got those trophies on display because very proud of them. Because it's part of your journey. And memories are great to look back and reflect on. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book, because I just wanted to just get something down on paper for my two grandsons, just to and it also very cathartic, and it closed one or two circles, and it put a few full stops at the end of different aspects of my life, both good, bad, and indifferent.
And that's it, isn't it? I mean, if you've got those, and rightly so, you've got those accolades on show. When you've got your Mr. Sheen out and you're doing a bit of dusting, every time you pick them up, it probably takes you back to a bygone era, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely. And the best thing about writing the book was that it took me back. I've not got the best memory, but then all of a sudden, when I did some research about whatever chapter I was trying to write, and there's a lot of information out there which is brilliant about, got to Google if you like. Uh, it just came flooding back. I talked about going to Lebanon for the weekend. I talk about going to Russia. I talk about all my trips, and all of a sudden, I talk about the game Castleford Tigers, and all of a sudden you're back. I'm back in that moment, and it gives me goosebumps to think, wow, that I remember it so vividly and so clearly. Uh, just when you're in that moment, when you're typing away, and it is so cathartic, very emotional at times. I'll be honest with you, I was in tears writing it. There were times when I was laughing writing it. There's times when I was um, angry writing it. There's times when I was frustrated writing it, but there's an immense amount of proud. I'm very, very proud, a lot of pride, should I say, writing it at the end of it. And that's why, it's not about sales. It is about sales because I'm trying to raise money for two charities that are very, very close to my heart. But for me, it was just about getting something down on
Yeah.
paper that I could be hopefully immensely proud of. And I woke up this morning to a message from Phil Bentham, who writes me forwarder, and he
Yeah.
features very heavily in the book.
Yeah.
And he just put, "Wow, I've just finished your book. What a fantastic read." He said he was frustrated that I put myself down too much in the book,
Yeah.
and I should have celebrated my successes more than I did. But he just said, really, really proud of knowing you. So I just thought, what a wonderful accolade from probably one of the greatest referees I refereed alongside of, and one of the greatest blokes I've had the privilege to work with and be a friend of.
Well, we're hoping to get Phil on in the future, but yeah, I agree. I think Phil's a champion fella, and I agree with him. I always go with the punches because there's no order to how I interview. So you mentioned it, and I absolutely agree with Phil. I think what comes across, and the way you explain yourself in 3 words as well, what comes across in this book is, for whatever reason, you do talk yourself down. It does fly off the page that you don't see yourself as almost being worthy at times. It comes across that way. Imposter syndrome I think is what they call it these days. Were you mindful of that when you wrote it, that you were coming across as somebody, don't get me wrong, very grateful that you were there. That comes through as well. You mentioned the trips that you made to Lebanon, Russia, Australia, doing your video referee, all these type of things. It's offered you great lifetime experiences, and you're very thankful for that in the book. But when you're talking about you as a referee, what you actually did on the field, you are very hard on yourself.
Uh, yeah, I was around in the noughties, that decade or so that I refereed. Oh, my word, there were some great referees. Like I said, I walked into the boardroom at Red Hall, and you got Stuart Cummins and Russell Smith and both Connolly's, Carl Kirkpatrick and Dave Campbell, and it was like wow, 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 wow. They were great. Uh, and when I looked around the room, I did have imposter syndrome because I never felt that I could lace their boots, and I just felt that Greg McCallum had given me an opportunity. And I also think that referees are judged on how many grand finals they referee, how many Challenge Cup finals. That's how I saw it, and that's how I saw it as I was writing the book. That's why I always introduce myself as a former failed rugby league referee. But then there's one chapter where I talk about success and failure. And then when I've really brought that down, um, my ambition was to become a full-time rugby league referee, which I achieved. And my second ambition was to referee one Super League game, and I refereed 272. So I overachieved 272 times. So now I don't see myself as a failure anymore. Still, still class myself as an average Super League referee, but I'm okay with average. I'm okay with ordinary. I think nowadays, and I mention it in the book, everybody wants to be extraordinary. Everybody wants to. There's almost I'll do anything I can to climb over somebody. I weren't prepared to do that. I just wanted to work as hard as I could for Ian Smith to get the best out of the ability what Ian Smith had. And if it means that I only did 272 Super League games, then so be it. But I'm now comfortable with that. I wasn't at the time. I was frustrated. I felt maybe I should have pushed myself more. However, I don't mean push myself as in training. I mean push myself against the establishment more and try to be more forthright. But my personality is not that. I'm a quiet, shy, quite insecure type of a bloke. But as soon as I put that uniform on, it just came alive. I loved it. Um, and I miss that feeling every single day. But I just think I did really well with the modicum of talent that I had.
Even then, when you're talking, you use the word only 272 Super League games. There'll be many amateur referees who'll never do one, who will be sitting there now going, wow. And I think, you've got your state of mind top on there, and we've only met today. My encouragement to you would be you need to drop the onlys. You need to drop all of that because actually, you know, it's an achievement. And we were talking before we came on air. I do work in mental health, as you know. I think comparison is a killer in life. You're on your own journey. And by your metrics, you set yourself very simple metrics. You wanted to be a full time referee and you wanted to do one Super League game. You overachieved that ambition, which says a lot about you as a man. But let's go back to the full time referee. There were six initial full time referees, and Ian Smith was one of them. Out of all of those referees at the time, you were one of them. So how can you sit there, and this is a conversation to have with yourself, how can you possibly sit there and go, only? That's an incredible accolade in Ian Smith's life.
Absolutely, and that's what writing the book has finished. It's given me closure on that only. And I don't want to disrespect people who think that I'm being big headed when I say only. I'm not, and you're right. I shouldn't use the word only. You know, there's always seems to be. However, I referee 272 games in Super League. However, I never refereed a grand final. I referee, however, I never, so you're right. I've got to drop the buts. I've got to drop the howevers and drop the if onlys.
Yeah,
But the book has absolutely given me the opportunity to do that. And I'm now very, very comfortable with
yeah.
my career. I'm very proud of my career. Is there frustrations? Absolutely. But name me one person who's not frustrated with the lot. We can all, but again, going back to the journeys, I can only equate my journey to Ian Smith. And the one thing I have done now is I've gone full circle and I'm more than comfortable in the skin. I never really particularly liked being Ian Smith at times. Again, going back to imposter syndrome, as a referee, I always wanted it to be like your Russell Smith, who had that incredible fitness, who had the respect of the whole game, who had great conversation, or the Stuart Cummins, who was just so calm and his decision making was incredible, or like your Ashley Klein, that little bit of cockiness, the Australian cockiness, but could back it up um, with ability, and it's only now that I realise that I absolutely love being Ian Smith. Warts and all, am I perfect? Absolutely not. But, who is? And I do really enjoy being who I am now.
If you can wake up every morning comfortable in your own skin, It's a great life, and I'm pleased that you feel that way. And hopefully, we get the likes of Phil on and Ben Failer and these type of people in the future. And if they ever, when we're having conversations, because you've given them a lot of plaudits, if they ever mention Ian Smith, and I will not preempt that, by the way, but if ever Ian Smith's name come up in those in convos, I'll send you the clip just so again you can see how you're thought of, because I'm sure you will be. You'll be well thought of in the refereeing circles, whether you know that or not. So let's go back to that 2006 and you becoming a full-time referee. I was very taken by your interview, very taken when you were interviewed for that job, because you were asked, why do you want this position? What is it that you believe that this can bring to you? And your response to that, can you remember your response to that?
Yeah, I just felt I'd still got a lot of learning in me. And I just felt that being around my peers and being around other great referees would bring me on, because what you got to bear in mind is, even though we were in Super League at the time, so all those were full time, we were part time. So we got to meet up 3 Tuesdays out of 4 as a group. And because of the how busy Stuart Cummins was, who was our coach at the time, we got by the time we got our DVD from the weekend and get a chance to watch it, you were on your game, you were virtually on your game for the next week. So the coaching aspect was absolutely minimal. And I'm very much one that I need coaching, I need guidance, I need people to say, right, if you stand there and do that, and if and I just need that. My brain needs that analytical coaching, and I felt that with my peers around me, with the day to day coaching that Stuart Cummins in particular could offer, that I could improve, and I believe I did.
Yeah.
I felt that I improved. I think we all improved as a group. Some improved quicker than others, and the plaudits and the finals that they got will dictate that. But I definitely felt that my standard of refereeing improved uh, in those 4 full years of Super League, full
Yeah.
time.
And again, you go back to how many finals people did. We were talking again before we came on air, and I said, and it's not just because he did in combo. I thought Aaron Moore, sorry, for me, was the best referee last year, not because he didn't get the finals, because of his individual improvement. And you've said it. You're up against Ian Smith in life. You're not up against anybody else. You're up against Ian Smith. I'm up against me. Aaron's up against him. Set your own goals, and as long as you move forward every day of your life, and you're moving towards being a better man, a better person, better in your career, whatever it may be, that's a successful day in life. And I thought Aaron had a lot of successful days last year, hence the reason why I put him top of the tree. What was also interesting was you got your dream in that respect, because what I picked out was the fact that unlike before you were a full-time referee, you're now getting DVDs of your performance 30 minutes after the final whistle. So you could actually wait, get your DVD, watch that before you had your debrief on a Monday. For somebody like you who wants to get into the detail, because that again shines through, you really do want to, critique and see the goods and see the bad in your own performance. For you, that must have been happy days.
Oh, it was wonderful. You're right. I needed to see, I needed to chronicle the good, bad, and the indifferent in the performance, and also it give you a little bit of closure as well, or opened up wounds depending on whether the decision was correct or not. You just because obviously at the time there were only 2 games on Sky at the time. Now everyone, so even if they were part time, you could still get home and see your game. But at the time, you couldn't unless you was the ones on the telly. So it was just really important that I got home, and broke it down into its individual parts, so that when I went in on a Monday and I'd sit with the coaching staff to go through my performance, I knew how I thought my performance, and I was hopefully pre-armed, if that's the right word, for anything that they come back that was on the negative. Why did you give that decision? What was your thought process there? So I'd gone through it over and over again, both visually and in my mind, as to what my answer was. And I think sometimes as referees, because we're heavily criticised, we also internally criticise ourselves. So we're always looking not for an excuse, but for a reason and a rationale as to why we made an error, without saying, something, I just didn't see it like that. Just it's a poor call. And sometimes we can get overly defensive rather than just say, I got it wrong, because he's bombarded, So instead of circling the wagons and making sure that we look after ourselves, we're almost like on the inside shooting out as well at times, and we don't always do ourselves favors.
No, and of course you also talk in the book about those debrief sessions where you're having the video sessions with your peers around, and I picked this up over the years, and I don't know how come to you are talking about it, but you do hint at it in the book, and it's the reason why I'm going to go there. Culturally, at the time, the referee full-time team, whilst in some aspects you say there was a brotherhood there in terms of training and get willing each other on from a fitness perspective and all the rest. There's also a hint there that actually there was a big competition for those big grand finals and challenge cups, and you say you wasn't interested in that. You saw yourself as sixth anyway, which was interesting. You'd like to think that's not the case now because we've moved on, but many years down the track. But how did that affect you? Because obviously you didn't want to get into all of that, but you obviously witnessed this clamour for the top. Did that hold it back a little bit at that time in terms of professional refereeing?
I'm not sure whether it held it back. It made people very determined to improve, and it made people very determined to get the points across. Because what you got to bear in mind is there were some incredibly strong characters in that group back in the day, and they genuinely really had desire to get the finals. And sometimes they manipulated situations so that I won't say so that they got the final, because all finals are given on performance, and generally the best referee would get the finals. But again, refereeing is very subjective. So what I think is the best referee, you might not, and vice versa. And it's very difficult to put a score on a referee's performance because of all the subjectivity in the grey areas and this and the other that are involved in it. But was it toxic? At times it could be. Was it toxic towards me? No, because like I said, I was never seen as a threat. Was it disappointing at times? Was it frustrating at times? Was it still fantastic to be a full-time referee? Oh my God, yes. So the frustration uh, at times was far outweighed by the positives of driving over to Leeds, going in the pool, going on the track, pushing your body, pushing your mind, pushing the boundaries of wanting to be the best. Would I change it, that side of it? No. Would I be more vocal? Well, hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? Could I have been a better referee with the mindset I have now? Absolutely. I'm more comfortable in Ian Smith's skin now than I ever was. So I don't have imposter syndrome nowhere near like I did. So, I've learned a hell of a lot over these last 8 or 10, 12 years. Um, but again, that's life, isn't it? Every single one of us, we learn through experience. Experience you don't get from a book off a shelf. And sometimes those experiences can be painful, but they can also be incredible. And I want to celebrate rugby league refereeing as an incredible journey and an incredible career, and not something that we should be ashamed of going down that path, because it's wonderful. Like I mentioned before, to be on the pitch with your Alan Langers and your Barry Macks and your Paul and Danny Sculthorpes and all these incredible Kevin Sinfield, Rob Burrow. Wow. And I could go on and on and on and on. Steve Renouf and all these Trent Barretts. I could just, we could do another half an hour and I could just list Craig Fitzgibbon, the guy that towered over you, that was just had forearms, Greg Bird, when he were at Catalan, he'd get angry if he lost the toss for a kickoff, but it was just incredible to be part of their journey as well as mine.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to come away from that side, and thanks for answering that. I mean, like I say, from the outside looking in, that there was always rumours around that in terms of positioning and clearly that was happening at the time. Hopefully, that's not the case now. And I'd rather stay on the positives of what refereeing brings. One of the other things that I found really interesting, and this will, for Pete, and Ian goes into great detail in his book on this, was that prior to a game, so Ian got told, I think on a Tuesday, what game he's going to be refereeing on the weekend. And then you'd come in and you'd give a pre-match presentation to the referees on your game. Now, this might sound alien, so I'm not going to spoil this for anyone. Let Ian talk about it. But as I read it, I went, really? Wow. Because that was something I've never heard in all my time. So talk us through that. What's a pre-game preview to your colleagues all about? What was included in that?
Well, let's say you got Warrington versus Leeds on a Friday night on Sky. So you got your Adrian Moyles against your Barry Max. You got your Lee Breers against your Sinnes and all your halfbacks and your Ben Westwoods against your Gareth Ellis's. And so you break it down and you'd go on Opta and you find out what the penalty counts were, any certain players, any trends. And you just basically say, right, how are you going to set this game up? What are you looking for? Where are you going to stand? If it's in a corner? Are you going to really get next to Adrian Morley and get him to hold? Because if you were between B and C defender and Adrian's at A coming out of yardage, you know he's going to shoot off the line. So if you're going to get next to him and be really clear and hold Adrian, wait, and same with Barry, because it's a collision, it's a duel, it's just, you know, gladiatoral. That's the wrong word, but gladiatorial.
Gladiatorial. That's the one.
Gladiatorial. And that's what they were. So it was a case of breaking it down, and then you'd have players saying, just other referees saying, just because Lee Breers, if you're not careful, he'll umbrella you. He'll really shoot off the line. So you need to get some information from your touch judges regarding any shooters off the line to try to bring the ball back inside and this and the other. Because with Marcus Bai and one or two of these Leeds wingers at the time, the last thing you wanted to do was the ball to get out to the wing. So sometimes your wingers and your centres would really shoot up and try to umbrella them, if you like, to bring it back inside. So it wasn't just about preempting. Well, I suppose it was about preempting, but it was also getting your mind on the potential duels, the potential things that could really bring your game down. But ultimately, it was still a case of you see every collision in its entirety. Who wins the duel? Who wins the collision? Where are they? Do they stand up? Do they get square? Once you've done that, don't take your eye off the ball, literally. But also be mindful of A, B, and C defenders around you, so you can hold them with your voice, with your vocab, maybe with your hands, and also receive information from your touch judges. So it was just about switching on to it. And then the referees who'd had these teams a week before, they'd say, I just noticed such a body was just trying to reach round and not get square. And then we do it for that. And it just gave a really good clarity for the end of Thursday before you went off for the weekend. And it's just the most natural, normal, because teams do it and coaches will do it. Coaches will know more about Ian Smith on a Friday going into a game than probably Ian Smith knows about his game. So let's not be naive to think that the players don't know each individual idiosyncrasy of a referee, because they do. So why shouldn't we be pre-armed back the other way to try to preempt and stop players making infringements? I hope that's answered it.
Well, this is why I love in conversation. That is gold. For people who want to get into the real detail and to improve the rugby league knowledge, that's gold. What you've just done there, because like I say, outstanding stuff. And you're right. I mean, I've heard that the clubs are very mindful that certain referees are sticklers for certain parts of the game. So they do the referee prep. I know they do. And we talked about perhaps the positioning of a chess for finals, but that was a real positive from a professional rugby league standpoint, that you're all in a room there and you're getting dialogue from people who refereed these teams during the course of the season, loading you up with good intel for the game that's coming up. So that creates that family environment that we're in this together, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And to be fair, people say that referees react to things. No, the one thing that all being in that one room did, you could pick up trends. And Stuart was brilliant at picking up trends. Stuart Cummins, who was a boss at the time, at picking up little trends where things started to creep in that you'd noticed over a few weeks, and you'd say, right, how are we going to stop this? We're not going to go in heavy, but we need to be mindful that we need to stop this trend. So you'd have you'd have a way of dealing with it, either subtly or going in hard, whichever it was. But it wasn't just about being reactive. It was about trying to stop trends that were negative trends that was preventing halfbacks getting the ball quicker or markers getting square or whatever it was. We had to be in front of these trends, if you like, or nip them in the bud so it didn't become a huge problem further down the line.
Happy days. Yeah, great stuff. Absolutely fantastic. So let's keep on the field now. So you're on the field of play. One thing that again Ian talks about, and again read it in the book, but I'm not going to say exactly what this is. But when it comes to a live Sky game, Ian made sure that the game got off at the right time due to his pre-match prep where electronics were concerned. Have a read of that in the book. I found that quite funny. Right, you're on the field again. Comes out the book. The amount of decisions a referee has to make. You actually put a number on it. You put the number in your book as 16,000. Before we went on air today, you said 20. So anywhere between 16 to 20,000 decisions are made in an 80-minute game of rugby league. And then you bring in the fatigue factor because you, like the players, are running around like an headless chicken. You could be doing anywhere between 10 and 11K during an 80-minute game and having to make split-second decisions that are accurate. Talk to us about that modern day rugby league referee. That, if nothing else, that those two stats alone should make supporters stand up, take notice, and go, "Wow, they deserve respect."
Yeah, I just think let's go on the physiological side of it. We're fitted with heart rate monitors. We were from the early days, and the rest still are now. So they'll get the heart rate data. So my heart rate data, I will get a graph. So my average heart rate was 155 beats per minute. It would max out at 178, and I'd kick the game off at 134. Bearing in mind the type of training that we did, all the interval stuff and all the track sessions, my resting heart rate was low 50s. So I was really fit physically. So I've got 3 times the amount of adrenaline going around my body for 80 minutes. And I know players do the same, but the reason why players miss tackles and drop the ball between 30 and 40 minutes and 70, 80 minutes, because they're so fatigued and it's that split second. So our training schedules replicated our heart rates. So just to run 10, 11 kilometers without having to make any decisions, then you've got to watch the collision. You've got to make sure that it's not high. You've got to make sure that if there's 2 or 3 players in the tackle, how do they take them to ground? Then how do they move off? Then are the markers square? Are all the players on side? Then the 1100 passes. Then all the kicks. And if from a kick, is somebody in front? Has somebody within 10? Does somebody take the kicker down? Is there interference? Is the ball caught cleanly? Do they run 10 meters? Then you've got to start that again, replicate it 400 times every single game. And people don't realize just how much that is. Because not only are you looking at the ball being picked up from acting half, you're also looking at, has he played it correctly? Has he moved off the mark? Are the markers square? Are they reaching round? Is A and B and C defenders that I can control in my peripheral onside? Am I getting information from my touch judges about other players? Then all that pass. Is the lead runner going through the line? Is he running around his own man in close proximity? Has any defender been influenced negatively? Is that pass flat? Is it forward? Is it back? Is there a collision? Oh my God, I could go on and on and on. And this is where the 16 to 20,000 judgments come. I know they're not all decisions, but they're all judgments. At what point? At what point does the defender who is slightly in front have an influence on the game? He might be in front, but he hasn't made a tackle. But he's meant that ball has to be passed back inside. So there's an action. Is the action immediate penalty, or is the action of I've logged it and I'm going to have a word at appropriate time? It's a scrummage. It's a scrum. I might say to a player, "Hey, just give us another yard on your tens. You're going a little bit early. I'm getting some information from my touch judges about you." So there has been an action without it being a penalty. And the one thing I think fans should get is the rest mic tape. I'm back coaching with the rest now, and your Chris Kendalls and your Liam Moores and your Aaron Moores and Jack Smiths and et al. You want to listen to the level of vocab that they're going through every single time. They're literally talking for 80 minutes and running 11 kilometers and having an average heart rate of 150 to 160 beats. And then somebody sat at home watching them on telly with a remote control and say, "Whoa, do you know something? That 1100th pass, I think was slightly forward. Let's have a bit of perspective here. But unfortunately, they had one job. No, they did have one job, times 20,000 judgments, times 11 kilometers, you know, times are losing 2 liters in sweat, times are burning 1,700 calories. And just do it physiologically. Just run for 80 minutes and then let somebody start throwing scenarios at you and see if you can remember every single thing while you're fatigued. You won't be able to do, David, because
No.
of how difficult it is.
Ian, again, box office. That is outstanding. And again, the rugby league purists out there who are listening to that will go, "Wow!" I mean, let's be fair. I've got an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old kid, and sometimes I can't remember how many sugars are going into a cup of tea because I've got them in my ear. You've got 26 players on the field. You've got coaches. You've got your mic'd up and the rest of it. I know what you just said. But walk a mile in another man's shoes. And do you know what? Both yours and Aaron's interviews for me has even given me clarity on that because I've always said we haven't got a game without referees, and I like to think I've got a bit of judgment, but even more so having spoke to you two. It's changing my mindset, and I would say I'm pretty fair when it comes to referees, and people who watch me will probably say that I am. But yeah, outstanding stuff. You talked there about decision making. There was for me, and I'd have to say this, I'm a Warrington fan. There was a bit of a howler at Hull KR for me. The try that was given in the semi-final this year against Warrington. But what I thought was exceptional when it comes to your point, I thought Sam Burgess at full time when he said, "Well, yeah, maybe, but we shouldn't have missed the tackle. We shouldn't have done this. We shouldn't have done that." I think, and look, heat of the moment, these coaches, these players get a mic put in the face when their adrenaline's high and they've just come off the field. But again, I think there's a duty there in terms of, I think, yeah, a referee can make a gaff, and I thought that was a gaff, and there's countless that we could make. Liam Moore, the Wellesby where he tapped the ball at Lee, and it was a knock on, and he didn't see it, and people, and they're in a good scoring and all the rest of it. But that's just one of those 20,000 calls. There's tackles to be made, there's runs to be made, there's staying on side. That's the responsibility of the teams, isn't it? So I thought Sam did well with that. Do you think there should be a bit more of that where the coaches and the players are mindful that actually they have the responsibility as opposed to the referee?
Oh, absolutely. If we're talking about great players, then they don't come much better than Sam Burgess. And I think, Warrington made a great appointment in appointing him because he got so much respect from the fellow players. So, the lads that he's coaching. So if he says do it this way, if they don't, then they'd be naive. But yeah, the players control the outcome of the game. I know they said that the referee does, but they don't. The players control the outcome of the game. Now, what you get with some coaches, not naming any, but maybe they're a little bit insecure about the job. So if they can deflect the defeat onto the referee, then why wouldn't they? Instead of saying my team were really poor today, because Sam Burgess is obviously he is incredibly secure about his skill set, incredibly secure about his job, incredibly secure about the players he's got around him, that he can say, we just weren't good enough on the day without it causing toxicity within the dressing room or without the fact that he might lose his job this week because he's so much more than just a rugby league coach. But some coaches may be a bit insecure. So if I can offload it onto the referee for our loss, then it'll deflect the fact that my players just weren't good enough today. And were they not good enough because maybe I'm not good enough as a coach, or was it just an off day? The thing is, players and teams are allowed an off day. The referee isn't even allowed one off decision.
Yeah.
And I also disagree with you regarding the decision on the Ulcar Warrington, but that's for another day.
That's better about. We'll have a wrestle on that later. But yeah, again, you're talking about certain decisions that referees made. Ian talks in his book about not being able to get to his car after a game, and I think supporters need to be mindful of this. Hopefully, again, this has changed over the years, but a couple of games that Ian picks out in his book, one at Casford, one at Hull FC, where basically it was almost like SAS type. Let's get him out of the stadium. We've got to be better than that, as suppose. And again, this chat that you're doing over the decisions that you're making, the effort you've got to put in, the amount of running that you're doing. Hopefully, that plays a small part in maybe supporters' perspectives changing over the years. And I hope that's the case. But read that in his book. It's not good reading. And as a supporter myself, I don't want to be associated with that type of thing at full time. We're better than that as a rugby league community. Read Ian's book, and I'm sure, like me, it'll resonate, and hopefully, it will change the way some people behave at full time. I just want to touch on that whole game because I don't want to take too much out of the book because I don't want to spoil people's reading. What I'm a bit, and it made me quite sad actually. You're saying that as you wrote it, you were laughing, you were crying, you were this, that, the other. And without reading the book and without speaking today, I don't know this happened to Ian Smith. Hull FC against Leeds, the final whistle, hence the title of the book, that wasn't planned. And there's this sadness for me that you didn't end on your own terms, or you don't believe you did. Obviously, you went and took up a position at the Rugby Football League after that game. And there's this, it does come through the book that you haven't made peace with it. Hopefully, the book has made you make peace with it. But just talk to us about that, what you went through at that time when you did step out of full-time refereeing, because it's crystal clear as you read the book. It was the decision that maybe you wished, with hindsight, you hadn't made.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. Was I ready to retire? No. Did that game force me to retirement? Force is the wrong word. I was given an opportunity by Stuart Cummins, and I was really grateful for that opportunity. But I wish he hadn't have made it. I wish he hadn't have offered me that opportunity because my mindset at the time was not in a great place because of that amount of abuse I got after that game. And but again, hindsight's a wonderful thing. If I hadn't done that, would I have gone on to a different coaching path? Would I then ended up working for State of Mind Sport and working with the incredible Jimmy Gittins? And would I be absolutely at peace, both emotionally, physically, and mentally? And in an incredibly brilliant place because of the opportunities I've had with this charity and with Jimmy. So, who knows where I'd be now. I might have done 3 more games at the beginning of the following season, been that rubbish and got sacked and left the RFL in February of 2011 instead of January of 2016. So who knows? Every time we come to a crossroads, whether we go left or right in life, ultimately determines our destiny for the next crossroads and the next crossroads. Do I miss it? Still do. Is there some frustration? Absolutely. Do I wish I had retired after that game? Of course I do. Do I regret it? Regrets. Just, if you're not careful, it'll just eat you from the inside, which it did for a good number of years. And I'm not bitter. There are people in the book that I could have probably named who weren't as nice to me as I wish they would have been. But what does that get you? It just again eats you, and then everybody has two sides to every story. It's an honest account from Ian Smith's point of view, and I'm sure other people will have a different version of the accounts of those games and that day and whatever. And that's for them to write. This is not their book. This is my book because I wanted to talk about my career so that my grandchildren are proud about their granddad. And I hope that comes across in the book. And I've had some incredibly lovely feedback from it. And that makes me immensely proud that the respect that I've got within ex-players and fans and ex-referees. So maybe the imposter syndrome, maybe the humbleness and the Mr. Average, means that I'm not conceited and big-headed. So,
Maybe. Yeah. Again, wonderfully put. Yeah. So, just in terms of where we're going to go now, state of mind. Let's pick up that very quickly because that's, of course, your new passion. That's what you do now. You work with state of mind. What's that giving you? And for those who don't know what state of mind is, very briefly, just let them know what it's about.
Yeah, State of Mind is a mental health awareness charity that was born out of the tragic suicide of a rugby league great called Terry Newton. Terry took his own life in 2010, and two doctors from the NHS, Malcolm Ray and Phil Cooper, tried to find out if there was anything in place for rugby league players that were struggling emotionally, mentally because of this big, tough alpha male, can't show any weakness. And Jimmy Gittins, he played for uh, Wakefield, Dewsbury. He'll tell you himself he was not a great player, but he went playing for Charleston Rovers in 2002 and broke his neck, C3, C4, which is eye lesions, and he was initially paralysed from his neck down, but he's now a quadriplegic. And also Danny Sculthorpe and Phil Vivers worked for the charity along with Ian Knott and one or two others. And I pair up with Jimmy and I've done for the last 7 years, and we just travel the country, just breaking down the stigma, if I'm being honest, David, around mental health and promoting and celebrating good mental health. Because there's a thing that if I'm physically fit, I'll celebrate physical fitness. But when I'm mentally fit, we don't celebrate it. We only talk about mental fitness when it's in a low place, when it's in a bad place, and it's almost like the word that we don't want to talk about. You know, we celebrate good physical fitness, so why shouldn't we celebrate good mental fitness? So we try to break down the taboo and the stigma. And Jimmy's story is incredible. How he broke his neck, he was told he'd never walk, sit up, feed himself, have children, and he's done all of those, and he's an incredible bloke. And it is, again, going back to an honour and a privilege to work not only for this charity, but with this great man. He is an absolute legend. Honestly, I can't speak highly of him. And we're just trying to promote awareness. You know, that's all we are. We're an awareness raising charity, normal blokes talking about normal things, and to break down that, you know something, you're allowed to have a bad day. You're allowed to have things not go your way at times. But that doesn't mean to say that's what it'll always be. Tomorrow is another day, and celebrate the day. And then when you on the next day, celebrate that. And it just gives me an incredible work-life balance. I work with a great bloke, traveling around, meeting some incredible people. It gives me opportunity to play golf on my days off, to see my grandsons, my partner, and hopefully this book will raise some money towards State of Mind, because all profit 50% of the profits go to State of Mind, and the other 50% go to our local Parkinson's UK charity. My partner of 22 years. My girlfriend, she was diagnosed with Parkinson's just short of a couple of years ago. And we go to a support group and they're incredible. But they're always trying to raise money. And I thought if I could just raise some money towards them to get the right trainers in, to get the right um, whatever it is, to raise more awareness around Parkinson's and raise more awareness around state of mind sport, then it's a win-win.
A lot of pride came through the screen there in terms of how you feel about that. And again, going back to personal lifetime achievements, to do what you're doing is it's doing tremendous work. So outstanding stuff there. So if that's not going to make you go out and buying books, I don't know what it is. One, it's a fascinating read, and look at where the money's going to. And I was surprised, £11.99, £11.99 for that. I tell you, go and get it because it's well worth a read. You'll really enjoy it. It's a proper job. We're
Can
almost
I
done.
just
Go for
quickly
it.
tell you where it is available? I know you said
Go
Amazon. The
for it.
reason why I didn't go down your Amazons and your Waterstones and all that lot was with
Go.
respect to them, the commissions were just too high. And
So where
because I
can they
want
get
as
it in?
much money as I can. So it's all on my social medias. So
Right.
if you go on LinkedIn, go on Twitter, go on Instagram, go on Facebook, type my name in, you'll see it there. It'll give you a secure PayPal link. Click on the link. And like I say, it's £11.99, £2.50 posting and packing. I'm distributing them all from home because I'm trying to keep as much of the cost down as possible. So if you want me to sign it to somebody, then I will, or just sign it generally. Then absolutely, and you're right, 11.99. You know, you go to Costa and get a couple of coffees, and it costs you that. And you know, and some of the humbling feedback's been incredible. So if you go on my social medias, that'd be fantastic.
Well, all I will say is I've read it, and like I say, one, you're getting a great read. because it is a fascinating read, especially if you're into your rugby league and you want to get into the real mindset of a professional referee. There's also some heartwarming picks in there as well from Ian's life. And look at where the money's going, guys. So look, get onto Ian's social media, make it happen. Let's support Ian and those charities. We're almost done. Just want to pick your brains on a couple of final things, and then we'll wrap it up. You mentioned in the book about decisions and that it's always moving in terms of the rules of the game. And you talk a lot about certain rules of the game. Casper, we won't go there, read it in the book. Casper being one of them. And that's changed over the years. I just want to touch your brain on a couple of things that I'd expect may come in this year and where you are on it. So one of the ones that I think is really frustrating all of us is this inside the 10. Is a player interfering with play or not? We've had a couple of tries disallowed this year where a
Yeah.
player who's right out of the screen, yes, he's encroached the 10, but he's had very little bearing on the try being scored or not. That needs to go, doesn't he?
Uh, well, the NRL have a different interpretation. They have active and passive.
Yes.
So it's a case of, is a player who's 9.5, where there's a player who's onside within 1 yard. So is the guy who's going to catch the ball? Is my mindset on that player who's onside rather than the player who's offside 9.5? Of course it is. What it does is it brings in more subjectivity regarding, the way we've got it now is just black and white. If you're within 10, you're within 10. Where the NRL has more subjectivity to it. Is it passive? Well, actually, he may saw him out of the corner of his eye. So he was part of my mindset because I was going to catch him, I was going to run at him, but now I'm not because I've just took my mind off. So what you're doing is you're bringing a whole new level of subjectivity in. And the one thing us rugby league fans and players and coaches and referees want, sometimes we want simplicity. Our version is very simplistic. If you're within 10 and you're in front of the kicker, stay behind the kicker. Just stay behind the kicker. Then you can run as fast as you want and make a challenge. So I don't get why you complain that well, he's passive because he's within 10, but he's not really having an effect. Well then, just stay out of the 10 or just stay behind the kicker. So it's a very simplistic way of getting it right. Just time it. These players train all week, every single day on kicks. So just watch it and stay behind the kicker. How simple is that? So you're bringing an all new level of subjectivity. But I also do have some sympathy where he had no impact on that. I'm not the laws committee. I'll allow the 19 or 20 people on the laws committee to decide where we're going with that in the future.
So we're disagreeing. That's good. Hey, that's the way it should be. We're coming from different angles there. Captain's Challenge we are expecting to come in this year, like the NRL. I think that's been well rumoured. As a referee, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing?
Bit of both, if I'm perfectly honest. I think it can be a good way of saying, all right, then if you think I've got that wrong, then challenge it. And also, it also can show that the referee in the vast majority of the time gets it right. However, in the odd howler where he gets it wrong, maybe there is a get out. So I'm cool with the captain's challenge. The downside is that if we're not careful, people are complaining that an 80-minute game is now becoming 2.5 hours from start to finish. I think a way of combating that extra time might be to drop down the conversions and the kicks. I see players, and I won't name any, but you'll know them. I see players. All right, time's off after 1 minute 20 seconds from the try, but I see players taking. I've timed it over 2 minutes from the try being scored to the ball being kicked. So if you've got 10 tries and you're getting an extra 40 seconds every time, you're looking at 6 or 7 minutes extra just because a player is stood there looking at the post for an eternity. I like the shot clock on conversions, if I'm being perfectly honest. If we're going to reduce some of the time frame from start to finish, if we are going to bring captain challenge and we don't want the game to expand to 2.5 hours from start to finish.
Fascinating stuff. And on that, video refereeing, does that need to be timed? Because what I noticed, because I watch pretty well, I watch, here's one for you. I watched every 80 minutes of every Super League game this year. Every one. I watch a bit of which means I've not been able to watch as much NRL this year as I did the prior year because I've got the app for the NRL. But there is a stark difference in time between video refereeing in Australia and video refereeing in this hemisphere. They seem to get to decisions a lot quicker. When I asked Aaron this, Aaron said, we just want to get it right. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. But sometimes angle one shows you it's a try. But then we go and check it with another three. What's your thoughts on that? I'm just put that out there to you. Are we too overcautious as video referees? So sometimes as fans, you see stuff and you're like, why are we still reviewing this?
Oh well, you've got two separate processes to start with, so you're lightening two things that are very different. In the NRL, if the referee thinks it's a try, gives a try, and the video ref then in the next 80 to 90 seconds gets a chance to check. And if not, then he'll say, well, I think you need to check that. So then they go time off. So then the second part of the process is exactly the same. The NRL video refs will still want to get it right, but what they don't, ours. So for every time our referees go, it's a try, they don't do that over there. So if you've got 6 decisions in a game where 3 are tries and 3 are no tries, over there, they're only going for 50% of those. So your processes are totally different. But then do we want to get it right? Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. Could we have got it on the first one? Yeah, maybe. I'm a little bit betwixt and between. I don't want us to be reckless by saying one look, yeah, that's a try. Then you've got another look from the side where, oh, does it come away from his fingers? But I agree with you that if you don't get any angle on this first one, why would you keep coming back to this one that you've disproved is right? So we need to work more with the video refs to look at which angles, why would you keep coming back to this one, which you've already dismissed is one that hasn't given you anything? So yeah, absolutely more work needs to be done. But I'm also with Aaron that let's not be reckless. But if we keep going over the same replays and wanting a different outcome, that's a sign of insanity. If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. Looking at something and wanting a different outcome is just nonsense. So there's a bit of work, but the process in the NRL and Super League are totally different.
But coming back to our conversation a minute ago in terms of where you're talking about conversions taking 2 or 3 minutes, surely you've got to concede. We've had a few video refs this year where it's gone to 3.5, 4 minutes. That's just bonkers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's for Phil along with myself and the other coaches to do more work with the video refs to ensure that that they come up with the decision quicker without being reckless. So that maybe is a piece of work that needs to be done. Still come up with the same call in the Warrington Hillcat game, but that's another decision.
And then again, picking this one out your book, last one before we bring it to a close. You talked about the slow motion replay, and I'm in complete agreement with you here. Right, some things should not be slowed down. When certain, like for example, head-eye shots this year, there was a couple where if you watch it in normal speed, it doesn't look that bad, but you slow it down in if anybody, if I give myself a little slap over the cheek in slow motion, that's going to look a lot bad. If I just do that now, that's recorded in slow motion. You're going to see a dent in my cheek. It's going to look really bad. Whereas actually, you watch it in real time. It's just tapped itself. So that double movements, certain elements, when they slow it down for me, certain video referee calls should be done in normal time because that gives you a better insight. And what frustrates me is whenever anything goes up to the video ref, I'm going to say 90% of cases, they only look at the slow motion. They don't run it through in normal speed because I think some decisions would be made better if they did a bit of both or they made sure they looked at it in normal speed first, then slow it, then normal. What's your take on that?
I will. We'll have to disagree or agree to
Okay.
disagree on the double movement one because they'll look at it in slow motion to make sure that the ball hasn't come away from the hand. They'll look at it in slow motion to prove that the elbow is on the ground. But then they'll also every one a double movement. They'll say right now play it in full speed. So everyone. The foul play is a tricky one because they have to know point of contact. So they have to know, is the first point of contact on on the shoulder or on the chest or on the arm? Does it ricochet? So they need to know exactly where first point of contact is, because that decides then whether it's direct or indirect. And then also, but I agree to a certain degree about level of force. The thing is about force, whether it's forceful and dangerous and mitigation, is, when you go to the fairground and you have the big hammer and you hit it on the thing and it bing goes up and it pings and it gives you a level of force. But we haven't got a ping. We haven't got something that says. So I might look at something and think, oh my God, that is one, it's direct, two, it's with force. And then another referee might go, there's hardly any force, sir. It looks like it's only a bit of a slap. So the subjectivity, the difficulty you've got is where you'll go, I think that's forceful and dangerous, and it's direct. Well, I think it's low level force, even though it's direct. So I'm going red and you're going yellow. And then it goes to the match review panel, and there's 4 or 5 people there who can look at it over 20 minutes, half an hour, even an hour, and they'll say, yeah, it's direct. And 3 of them might say it's forceful, 2 of them might say it's minimal force. That's a subjectivity. So we haven't got a ping to know. So you were going to have discrepancies in that, whether it's fast, whether it's at full speed or in slow motion.
But isn't the gum shield supposed to give us that data now?
Oh, well, if the gum shield gives you data, it certainly don't give you data for the video refs on a Friday, Saturday,
No.
Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Yeah.
Because if it does, I've never seen
No.
any gum shield data.
Yeah, because they brought that in last year. So the gum shield now supposedly tells what the force is on a head-eye shot.
Right.
But I think if we're going to improve the game and get those, because again, going back to what you said about referees wanting to get the right calls, for me, the next stage should be that they have instant feed out of that, because that will make them make better decisions. If the gum shield's giving them, because again, that ping, at what level do we say, right, that is a yellow, that is a red? Again, it just gives them that little bit of, right, once it goes over there, it's low level force, but it's a yellow. Once it goes above that, it's a red. That's reckless and it's hurt them or whatever. So I think for me, we've got that technology now. I think the referees during the game, certainly the video referee, should be able to get that instantaneous, so that actually it's a part of their decision making process, and that could take us forward.
Well, I've never ever seen any gum shield data. So right. Whoever's got that gum shield data, what we really need to do is get every red or yellow card from across the season and get every gum shield data across the season for all those, and say, well, you give that a red, but actually it's only 2.4. You give that a yellow, but it's 5.6, whatever. If it's a 1 to 10 scale, I don't know.
Yeah.
So that would make absolute sense. And then you could say, well, okay, going forward, even though we might not get that, we'll be able to judge, and maybe, so all we're trying to do on those subjectivity areas and subjective areas is minimize it so that there's less gray areas. And that, going back to is he within 10 or is he not within 10? Once we bring that level of subjectivity, is it passive, is it not passive? Is it direct, is it not direct? Is it high level force, is it low level force? Boom. Then all of a sudden, that's where we get social media blowing up saying, hang on a minute, last week you got a red card for that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but last week that gum shield data said it was 7.8. This week it's only 2.4. That's why it's a yellow. Yeah. I've never seen that. Didn't even know that existed.
Only came in this year, and I don't think all the players are actually wearing them, which again should be standardised. But yeah, I think that could be a way forward. Right, brilliant conversation. The last thing that I want you to quickly do before we finish is this. We have talked about lots of things today. I want to go back to young kids, people of a certain age, who might at this moment in time love rugby league, might be playing at an amateur side, but hasn't considered full-time refereeing. We know there's a shortage of refereeing in rugby league. I'm talking to Ian Smith, who has had an exceptional career in terms of how many games he's officiated. Note the words I'm using here, Ian. Yeah, has travelled the world through rugby league, Lebanon, Russia, Australia. Yeah, an incredible life. You've had an incredible life through rugby league. So this is your pitch to try and get more kids, teenagers, to become full-time. Well, not full-time, but go on a pathway like you did to hopefully one day becoming a full-time referee. Over to you. Give it your pitch.
You'll absolutely love it. It will be, trust me, it will be the best decision you will ever make in terms of rugby league. Like I say, it gives you an opportunity to just run out there in an atmosphere that is electric, that is passionate, that is so endearing at times because we haven't got a game without rugby league referees. It gets your heart rate going, it gets your adrenaline going, it gets the mind going, it gets you running, it gets you making multiple decisions. So the crossovers in the real world, if you like, are incredible. You know, be able to multitask, you'll be able to make multiple decisions over and over again while under duress, while under physical stress. And the feeling is just palpable. It is just incredible. And then you get the opportunity after to sit down and just survey and just think, my God, I've been in control of 34 players and I've given so many decisions whilst running. And that sets you up for so many other things in your life. And that's regardless of the camaraderie, regardless of the opportunity to travel the world. It's just an incredible thing. So I know social media and I know the negativity can be mind blowing at times. But all you've got to do, the only person you need to convince is the person in the mirror. And if you do the best job that you can possibly do, that is all that matters. Listen to the right people and get the right influencers around you. And trust me, it will be the best decision you ever make to pick up that whistle.
Absolutely incredible. Right. I'm going to close by saying this, and this will be a name that Ian knows. Okay. My teacher at school was a Mr. Frank Hawley. You'll know Frank, an absolute gentleman of a fella. And I remember speaking to Frank at Warrington just prior to him passing. And he told me about him living with cancer. And I'm going to say to you what I said to Frank, because I didn't know Ian Smith too well before I read his book. And I keep coming back to the way you talk about yourself. And I said to Frank, and I'll say it to you, we are judged in life more, our biggest judgment in life for me by anybody is the minds you influenced and the hearts that you touched. And it's the same with you, Ian. You know, you've said already through this that you want your grandkids to be proud. That's worth far more than a grand final, far more than a Challenge Cup. Look at all the work that you're doing with the other coaches in terms of developing the new talent today. And let me tell you now, those medals that your colleagues got will not be in the church, will not be in the crematorium when they pass. It will be people. And it's your legacy that you leave behind in the minds of others and the hearts of others that matter in life. And with that, I want to thank you for coming on today. It's been an absolute privilege speaking to you. Go well, stay in touch. Ladies and gentlemen, Ian Smith.
Thank you, David, and thank you for those kind words at the end. Really, really appreciate it. Best wishes to everybody and enjoy. Thank you.